Hi folks, this is Karim Raouf from the IT Visualizer channel. We will continue our lab, the Matrix Labs, the video number 64. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We are still working with the Pulper Knight Active Directory Security Assessment Tool, which is a free tool you can use to assess your security situation of your Active Directory, the security indicators, or to discover security indicators relating to your Active Directory. So we have stopped the last time at the security indicator, which is reversible passwords found in GPO. So here is talking about any passwords that are saved in a GPO. How we can save a password in a GPO. Remember, there is one of the GPOs, or you can reset a password for a certain user on a certain computer through a GPO. If you have such GPOs, the password are stored as you can see here, can be easily decrypted by an attacker. So if you have a GPO to reset a password or set a password for a user, a local user on a computer or on a workstation or on a server, here this is a weak point because a hacker can attack or can read the GPO and get or extract the passwords from it. It is possible to store local admin and other high value credentials in GPO. For example, if you are resetting the local administrator account on a workstation, you can do this using a GPO. So the password is stored in the GPO. It can be hacked. The passwords stored in GPO were encrypted using a global key that was published and easily available to any domain controller for decryption. Okay, here saying that there is a batch. Let's see this one. There is a batch to fix this issue. MS14.025 vulnerability in group policy preferences could allow elevation of privilege. This was released to close this gap or to close this issue when you are resetting or when you are setting a password for an account using a GPO. If we see, for example, here the summary of Copilot concerning this page. So this is a vulnerability that was fixed by a batch. But here let's see the summarization. Here this is, let's read it loudly.
Here is a summary of the page. Security Bulletin MS 14-025. Microsoft has released this bulletin to address the insecure storage of passwords in group policy preferences. Affected preferences. The update impacts drive maps, local users and groups, services, scheduled tasks, and data sources. Workarounds. Alternatives and scripts are provided to achieve similar goals without storing passwords insecurely. PowerShell script. A script is included to set local account passwords on remote machines securely. If you need more details on any specific section, feel free to ask.
So here is preferring if you need to change a password for a local account on a PC, you can use scripts other than using this or using the GPO. Let's see here the GPO. If you go to the GPO preferences, we will see, here you go, this is the way that you can, for example, let me show you how we can get this window. You can get it through a GPO. You can set the user or choose the user, then confirm the username or password. Now they are damped. If you do that through GPO, now they are damped, and it will give you like a warning that this is a security risk. To help you protect your environment, some actions may not be available. So you will not be able to reset a password or set a password for an account using the group policy preferences. Let me show you all how we can get this. I think we can get it from a group policy preference. Let me show you. This can be, you can get to this menu here. You can get it from computer configuration, control panel setting, local users and group, new local user, okay, or user configuration, control panel, local users, new local users. So here you can make a new local user and set the password for it, or I think you can also have an existing user and change the password of it. Okay, so this is all done from the preferences or GPO preferences. Okay, so this is it is already fixed, they have a batch to fix it, and they have already closed this gap. You cannot set a password for a user on a local machine or on a workstation machine in a domain using the GPO. You should do this using a script. Okay, so this is, he's talking about this issue. Okay, now okay, many shops stopped using this feature in GPO preferences to set passwords when Microsoft deprecated the feature. So it's depreciated, it's not available anymore in the GPO preferences. But existing password entries may have not been removed. So if you see that in your group policy preferences, then you will see that the password entries will be disabled. If you go there, we will see that you cannot, you will see this warning when you try to set a password. It will be damped. You cannot do that. You can create or modify or change. So this is how we do this. We will see it is damped. You cannot do that. Okay, so this area is one of the first things attacker look for when they are gained access to an AD environment, as older systems may still utilize those credentials. Okay, so take care. He is checking the sysvol folder which contains the group policies that will be applied in the domain. He is seeking a GPO that contain passwords, and we have seen how we can store passwords in a GPO when we try to set a password for a user. This can be done using a GPO, and the password is stored in the GPO. So this is not there. I don't have such group policy. Now we can go to the next security indicator, which is sysvol executable changes. The indicator looks for modification to executable files within sysvol folder. It only examines files and executable files that have read access to them. So you can, we all know that we have in the sysvol folder, we have two folders. One that contains the group policies, and the other can contain scripts or executable files. Okay, so you're checking who have read access, not had read access, who has the right access to this executable file. So read, you should have read access. If you, for example, have a script under the sysvol folder that need to be applied to all of the users in the domain, net login script or something, user should have the read access to it. Okay, so here is a checking. Let me see here. It only examines files and executable that have read access to them. Change to executable files in sysvol should be accounted by administrators. If the change cannot be accounted for, investigate the change looking for potential weakening of security posture and why the change was made. So I think here he is not checking the permissions. He's checking if there is any changes done to this executable file. Maybe you have a script that is or to be applied to the users, okay, and then it is changed. So it is checking if this executable files, if there is any modifications on it, or it is changed, or it is replaced. So this may be an indicator for a hacking process. Maybe you have put an executable files in the scripts folder under sysvol folder, so to be applied to the user, and then a hacker changes this script. So he's seeking or he's checking these executable files or scripts to see if they are modified or not, or there is any change made on it. Okay, it only examines files and executables that have read access to them. Okay, so the problem is not with the permissions. You have read permission to the executable files, but the executable file itself, if it is changed, it is replaced. Okay, so again, also these files are in the sysvol folder, which is a shared folder. Okay, so if you need to access a file under the sysvol shared folder, you should have the permissions to do that. So if a hacker can access the executable files under the sysvol folder, then he can, or I think he had modified the sysvol folder permissions to be able to access and change these executable files. Anyway, so he is checking if there is any changes done to executable files under sysvol folder. You should see if it is accountable or accounted by the administrators or other process. So you need to make sure of that. So here is checking the executable changes. Okay, he's checking the sysvol folder for any exe files or scripts that are modified or changed. Okay, I don't know if this is for a certain amount of time, maybe 24 hours or 7 days. Anyway, I don't know, but he's here, he's checking for a potential weakness of security posture and why we should know why a change happened. Okay, so this is a good thing. We can go and then go to the other things. GPO linking delegation at the AD site level. So here the three upcoming security indicators is focusing on GPO linking. Okay, so you can give a certain permission like linking GPOs, okay, to a certain IT personnel. So you can give ITX, for example, the permission to link GPOs at the domain level or the forest level or the OU level. So this is a very, very important permission. Okay, so if a hacker can have this kind of permissions, then he can, for example, hack an existing GPO, changes its permissions, and link it to a certain location he needs this GPO to be applied to. So let's see here GPO linking delegation at the AD site level. Okay, saying when non-privileged users can link GPOs at the site level. So he's talking not about an IT person and non-privileged users. Maybe by mistake you have given a user, a normal user, the permission to link a GPO to the domain level or the forest level or the site level. Okay, here is talking about the site level. So you can link a GPO to the site level or the domain level, okay, or the OU level. So if this is granted for a non-privileged user, then we have a problem. They have the ability to effect changes on the domain controllers as well as potentially elevate access and change domain-wide security posture. So when a GPO is applied to the site level, this will affect all of the domains and forest. Okay, so this is very, very critical. Okay, so a hacker can hack a GPO and change the settings, and then he can hack the user that have the privilege to link GPOs to the AD site and then link this GPO to the site level. Okay, this indicator looks for non-default principals who have write permissions on the GP link attribute or write DACL or write owner on the object. So he is seeking if there is any non-default principals, okay, or non-privileged users that have the right to link GPOs to the site level. Okay, this is very, very critical. If I show you an example of this one, I think I have it already, or I have seen a screenshot. Let me give you, or let me give you. Perplexity will give us. Let me get it here and give you a screenshot. This will be very, very simple. If you can get a screenshot, this will give us more details. Let me show you all what I mean here. If we go to search images, now we can have something like this. If we go there, so here you can link the GPO on the domain level. This can be done, and you can link it on the OU level, okay, and you can link it on the site level. This can also, if you go further down, you will see a site level. So here he is seeking, or he is focusing the upcoming three indicators on who have the right to link GPOs on the domain level or the OU level or the site level. Okay, let me get it here. Okay, this is another thing. So he can link the GPO to the site level. This can be done, or link it to the domain level. This also can be done, or on the OU level. So we need to know who are the users that have the permission to do so, to link GPOs to the domain level or site level or OU level. This should be done by privileged users, not normal users, okay? Because a hacker can hack normal users' accounts that have this privilege and use it to his advantage, okay? So this is what he's talking about. Here he's seeking to see who have this GPO linking delegation at the AD site level. This is the first thing. And if we go further, GPO linking delegation at the domain controller OU level. So this is not on, this is linking GPOs on the OU level, and especially one of the most important OUs are the domain controller OUs, which contains the domain controller's computer objects in the Active Directory. If we go there and see, let me get here, for example, this link, you will see we have the domain controllers OU, so you can link a GPO to the domain controllers OU. This is very, very critical because the domain controllers are the security guard keepers, or they are the ones responsible for securing and authenticating users and accessing or allowing access to resources in your domain. So this is very, very critical. Who have the right to link GPOs to the domain controller? So here I'm talking about linking, not creating, by the way. This is linking the GPOs. So this is one right and this is another right. Anyway, so here he is seeking who have the linking to all of these locations: domain controller OU, site, site level, and domain level. Again, when non-privileged users can link GPOs at the domain controller OU, they have the ability to affect changes on domain controller, as well potentially elevate access and change domain-wide security posture. Okay, so this is another thing. And if we go to the third one, GPO linking at the domain level. So if we go there again, this is linking to the domain level. This is linking to the domain controller's OU level or any OU. And the last one, which is the site level. Okay, so here is it checking who have the permission to do so, or GPO linking at these different levels. Okay, so this is very, very good. Now we have finished the section concerning the group policy security indicators that is included in the Purple Knight security or Active Directory security assessment report. Okay, now we will go to the Kerberos security. Kerberos is very, very critical for authenticating users and allowing them to access to the domain and share the resources of the domain or access the resources of the domain. Kerberos security indicators pertain to the configuration of Kerberos. We all know what is Kerberos. Capabilities on computer and user accounts within AD. So he's seeking the configuration of Kerberos capabilities on computers and user accounts. We will see later that you can assign, or you can give a computer something, or delegate to a computer something related to the Kerberos capabilities. You can delegate to the computer the capability to this capability that you can talk to the Kerberos or the KDC or key distribution center, okay, which is mainly what the Kerberos is there. It is in this one. So you can take, or you can delegate some Kerberos capabilities to a computer. So you can talk to a computer, or a computer can talk to the Kerberos to get grant tickets. You can do that instead of the users, for example. And you can create service accounts that will take grant tickets from the Kerberos instead of users. We will see all of these situations and we'll see all of these cases. But first of all, we need to make sure, first of all, these are talking about Kerberos security. So it's focusing upon the Kerberos, which is the protocol for authenticating users in the domain. Okay, the first thing we need to know, accounts with alternative security identities configured. Very, very simple. It was a little bit difficult for me first to know what is this one, but here he is seeking if there is any accounts that authenticate to the domain using different identity ways or different identities, okay? Not identity itself, but a way to authenticate. For example, here is talking about if a user can authenticate using a username and password, or using a smart card, or using a certificate. You can authenticate the user using these three different methods. You can authenticate to the domain using a username and a password, and you can authenticate to the domain using a smart card, and you can authenticate to the domain using a certificate. Basically, or common talking, that your name and identity should be the same on the three methods, but you can take advantage of this, for example, to authenticate to the domain using a username and a password and authenticate using a smart card using a different identity. This here is the weak point. Okay, a hacker can alter one of these methods, okay, to authenticate using his name or using another high privilege username. We will see that in a moment. I will show you all something like that, but here he is seeking this. You can take a user and make it authenticate using different authentication methods. Okay, here is talking about alternative security identity. And by the way, you can use this attribute to authenticate using different names. So this is here is the weak point. You can authenticate to the domain using a username and a password, and authenticate using a smart card using a different username and password, and authenticate using the certificate using a third username and password. So the three are different, but it is belonging to one person. Okay, here is the problem, or here where the problem arises. So let me first stop and come back to you in 1 minute. So let's continue, guys. Let's see a practical example to see how this can be achieved. How can a hacker steal one of your alternative security identities and compromise the network? This type of attack may be easy to spot and is rarely configured during normal operations. However, it is possible for this attribute to be configured genuinely. So let's see, for example, Perplexity, when he is talking about something like that. If we go and see where this attribute should reside, if we go, let me show you one thing here. One of the attributes. Here you see, here is the alternative security identity. Here is not set. This is for a user called stuff. You can play with the alternative security identity from here. And this is on the user and on a certificate. So you can go to the certificate and you can play with the alternative security identity. Okay, Kerberos name mapped user account. So you can use an alternative identity here, or this is called Kerberos external mapping. This is related to the Kerberos external mapping certificate, I think, or option, and this is for the certificates. You can also put a name here. So these are all the fields you can put alternative identities in it. Okay, so let's see what will Perplexity give us as an example to explain this test and see how it is very, very dangerous and we should focus on it. Let's go there and see.
Understanding the Alt Security Identities attribute in Active Directory. The Alt Security Identities attribute in Active Directory, AD, is a multi-valued attribute that allows for the mapping of X.509 certificates and external Kerberos accounts to a user account. This capability can be leveraged for legitimate purposes, such as enabling users to authenticate using certificates. However, it also poses a security risk, as malicious actors can exploit this attribute to impersonate other accounts. Real-world example: impersonation in the matrix.internal domain. Imagine a scenario within an organization named matrix.internal. In this domain, there are several user accounts, including Alice, Smith, and Bob Johnson. Both users have legitimate roles and permissions within the organization. Legitimate use case. In a typical situation, Alice might need to access certain resources that require certificate-based authentication. The domain administrator could add a mapping for Alice's X.509 certificate in her Alt Security Identities attribute. This would allow her to authenticate seamlessly when accessing secure applications. Potential abuse. Now, consider a situation where an attacker gains unauthorized access to the AD environment and has write permissions on the Alt Security Identities attribute of Bob's account. The attacker could perform the following steps. Add a malicious mapping. The attacker could add an entry like Kerberos, attacker at matrix.internal to Bob's Alt Security Identities attribute. Impersonation. With this mapping in place, the attacker can now authenticate as Bob using their own credentials, effectively impersonating him. This could grant the attacker access to sensitive resources that Bob has permission to access. Exploitation of permissions. If Bob has elevated privileges, e.g., being part of the domain admins group, the attacker can execute further attacks within the domain, potentially compromising more accounts or resources. Likelihood of compromise. While such attacks may be easy to spot because the alt security identities attribute is rarely configured during normal operations, it is essential to recognize that legitimate configurations can occur as well. For instance, if Bob genuinely needs to authenticate using a certificate for his role, this attribute might be correctly populated. Mitigation strategies. To prevent such exploits, organizations should regularly audit user accounts for unusual configurations of the alt security identities attribute. Implement strict access controls on who can modify this attribute.
So we'll stop, guys. So let's continue, guys.
Attribute. Monitor authentication logs for any suspicious activity related to certificate-based logins. By understanding both the legitimate uses and potential abuses of the alt security identities attribute, organizations like Matrix.Internal can better protect their Active Directory environments from impersonation attacks.
So this is the answer of perplexity. If we go and ask ChatGPT 01 to illustrate the same security indicator, let's see the answer.
Understanding the vulnerability in the context of Matrix.Internal. In an Active Directory 80 environment for the domain Matrix.Internal, the alt security identities attribute plays a crucial role in mapping external security identities, like X.509 certificates or external Kerberos principals, to AD user accounts. While this feature facilitates integrations such as smart card logins or cross-domain authentications, it can be exploited to impersonate user accounts if misconfigured or maliciously altered. Real-world example: unauthorized account impersonation. Let's walk through a scenario to illustrate how this vulnerability can be exploited within Matrix.Internal. Characters involved: Neo, a legitimate user with privileged access in the domain; Agent Smith, an attacker who has gained certain privileges within the domain. Scenario steps: 1. Agent Smith gains limited administrative access. Agent Smith manages to obtain delegated permissions that allow him to modify user attributes in Active Directory. This could be through phishing, exploiting vulnerabilities, or abusing misconfigurations. 2. Agent Smith obtains or creates an X509 certificate. He generates an X509 certificate, perhaps from a compromised certificate authority, CA, or a trusted internal CA within Matrix.Internal. 3. Modifying Neo's alt security identities attribute. Smith adds his own certificate's identity to Neo's alt security identities attribute. For example, X509 ICN Matrix internal CA, DC equals Matrix, DC equals internal S equals Agent Smith. This entry tells Active Directory that anyone presenting a certificate matching this identity should be authenticated as Neo. 4. Authenticating as Neo. Smith uses his certificate to authenticate to the domain. Active Directory checks the alt security identities attribute of all user accounts and finds a match with Neo's account. 5. Impersonation achieved. Smith now has access to all resources and privileges assigned to Neo, effectively impersonating him without needing Neo's password. Implications of the exploit: unauthorized access to sensitive data. Smith can access confidential information, modify data, or perform administrative tasks under Neo's identity. Evasion of detection. Activities performed by Smith will be logged as actions taken by Neo, making it challenging to trace malicious actions back to Smith. Potential for further exploitation. With Neo's privileges, Smith could create backdoors, elevate privileges of other accounts, or disable security features. Likelihood of compromise. Rare configuration. The alt security identities attribute is seldom used in typical operations within Matrix.Internal, so any configured values may raise red flags during audits. Legitimate use cases. In environments where smart card authentication or federated services are in use, legitimate entries in alt security identities may exist, which requires careful analysis to distinguish between valid configurations and malicious ones. Preventative measures. 1. Restrict modification permissions. Ensure that only a minimal number of trusted administrators have the rights to modify the alt security identities attribute. 2. Regular auditing. Periodically audit user accounts for unexpected entries in the alt security identities attribute, focusing on privileged accounts like Neo's. 3. Implement monitoring and alerts. Set up real-time alerts for changes to critical attributes in Active Directory. Tools like Microsoft Advanced Threat Analytics can help detect unusual activities. 4. Educate administrators. Train IT staff about the risks associated with this attribute and enforce policies that govern its use. 5. Certificate management. Secure the issuance of certificates by protecting CAs and validating certificate requests diligently. Conclusion. In the matrix.internal domain, misuse of the alt security identities attribute can lead to severe security breaches through account impersonation. By understanding how this exploit works and implementing strict controls and monitoring, the organization can mitigate the risks associated with this vulnerability.
So this is the answer of ChatGPT, which seems to be illustrating more. Now we can see here Claude. I have given me a diagram for normal authentication. It uses standard credentials. Authentication process normally access to matrix resources. Legitimate security. IT adds a smart card certificate to alternative security identities. Neo authenticates with a smart card. Grant access based on certificate. Potential attack scenario. Attacker modifies alternative security. Add an unauthorized certificate. Now he can impersonate Neo. Warning: unauthorized security alternative security identities modification detected. Very simple diagram. And if we see the explanation of Claude, if we go there and try to read it loudly, let's see also what will be the explanation concerning this one.
Counts. Copy. Retry. Claude does not have. Let's break this down using a real-world example in the context of Active Directory for a domain named matrix.internal. Imagine you're an IT administrator for a company called Matrix Corp, which uses the Active Directory domain matrix.internal. In this domain, you have various user accounts, including one for a high-level executive named Neo. The alt security identities attribute in Active Directory is like an additional set of keys for a user account. Normally, users log in with their username and password. However, this attribute allows for alternative ways to authenticate, such as using smart cards or external Kerberos tickets. Real-world scenario. Normal setup. Neo's account normally authenticates using his username. Neo at Start new chat. Start chat to use all. Normal setup. Neo's account normally authenticates using his username, Neo at matrix.internal, and password. Legitimate use of alt security identities. Matrix Corp decides matrix.internal. Start new chat. Legitimate use of alt security identities. Matrix Corp decides to implement smart card authentication for executives. The IT team adds Neo's smart card certificate information to his alt security identities attribute. Now Neo can log in using either his password or his smart card. Potential attack scenario. A matrix. Start new chat. Potential attack scenario. A malicious actor named Agent Smith gains access to modify Active Directory attributes. They add their own certificate or Kerberos information to Neo's alt security identities attribute. Now, Agent Smith can potentially authenticate as Neo without knowing Neo's password or having his smart card. Detection. The security team at Matrix Corp runs a check across all user accounts in the matrix.internal domain, looking for any accounts with the alt security identities attribute configured. They find Neo's account has this attribute set, which is expected due to the smart card implementation. However, they also find it set on another regular employee account, which raises suspicion as it's not part of their normal configuration. The likelihood of compromise. In the Matrix Corp scenario, seeing alt security identities configured on executive accounts wouldn't be suspicious due to the smart card implementation. However, finding it on other accounts where it's not expected could indicate a potential security breach. It's considered potentially easy to spot because, in many organizations, this attribute is rarely used. There's usually a specific, documented reason when it is used, like the smart card example. Any unexpected changes to this attribute, especially on high-value accounts, should stand out in security audits. However, the warning about it potentially being configured genuinely is important. In our Matrix Corp example, a security analyst needs to distinguish between the legitimate use on Neos account and the potentially malicious use on other unexpected accounts. Copy. Retry. Claude does not have internet access. Links provided may not be accurate or up to date. Kronne? Explain this in layman's terms. The alt security identities attribute in Active Directory, AD, is a multi-valued attribute that allows for the mapping of X.509 certificates and external Kerberos accounts.
So we'll stop at that minute, guys. I'll come back. So let's continue, guys. Here we'll try to explain. I'll try here to figure what is X.59 or 59 certificate and external Kerberos accounts. Here I asked Claude to explain this statement, and also I asked Perplexity. Let's see the answer.
Accounts. Let's break this down into simpler terms. The alt security identities attribute in Active Directory is like a special drawer in a filing cabinet for each user account. This drawer can hold multiple types of special keys or badges that allow someone to prove their identity in different ways. Multi-valued attribute. Think of this as a drawer that can hold multiple items, not just one. You can put several different things in this drawer, and they're all valid. X.509 certificates. These are like digital ID cards. They're a secure way for computers to verify someone's identity, similar to how a driver's license proves your identity in the real world. External Kerberos accounts. Kerberos is a system that helps computers securely identify users. External here means it's from outside your own network. You can think of this like having a visitor badge from another company that your security system recognizes. Mapping. This means creating a connection or link. In this case, it's linking these alternative forms of identification to a user's account. So, in everyday terms, the alt security identities attribute is like giving a user extra ways to prove who they are to the computer system, beyond just their usual username and password. It's as if, in addition to your employee ID card, your office also accepts your driver's license or a visitor badge from a trusted partner company as valid ID to enter the building. This can be useful for things like allowing users to log in with smart cards, enabling single sign-on with external systems, supporting more advanced or flexible authentication methods. However, as mentioned in the previous explanation, this flexibility also means it needs to be carefully managed to prevent misuse. Copy. Retry. Kronne. What is external Kerberos account, and what it is used for given example? Certainly. Let's break down what an external Kerberos account is and provide a real-world example to illustrate its use. An external Kerberos account refers to a user account that exists in a separate Kerberos realm. Think of a realm as a security boundary, similar to a domain, outside of your own organization's network. Kerberos is a network authentication protocol that allows users to prove their identity securely without sending passwords over the network. Here's what it means and how it's used. External. It's from outside your organization's direct control. Kerberos. It uses the Kerberos authentication protocol. Account. It represents a user's identity and access rights. Now, let's look at a practical example. Imagine two companies, TechCorp and Data Inc. TechCorp, Realm, TechCorp.com. Employee, Alice. Alice's account, Alice at TechCorp.com. Data Inc., Realm, DataInc.com. Project Manager, Bob. Bob's account, Bob at DataInc.com. Scenario, TechCorp and Data Inc. are collaborating on a joint project. Alice from TechCorp needs to access certain resources on Datinx's network regularly. Without external Kerberos accounts, Alice would need a separate account on Datinx system, leading to multiple accounts to manage and potential security risks. Using external Kerberos accounts, Datinx configures their system to trust TechCorp's Kerberos realm. They map Alice's TechCorp account, alice@techcorp.com, to appropriate permissions in their system. In Active Directory, they might use the Alt Security Identities attribute to associate Alice's external Kerberos identity with a local account. Now, when Alice needs to access Datinx resources, she authenticates once with her TechCorp credentials. The Kerberos protocol securely communicates her identity to Datinx systems. Datinx systems recognize her external Kerberos account and grant appropriate access. Benefits: single sign-on. SSO Alice doesn't need separate credentials for Datinx. Improved security. Passwords aren't shared between organizations. Easier management. IT teams don't need to manage duplicate accounts. Audit trail. Activities can be traced back to Alice's actual identity. This setup allows for secure, streamlined collaboration between organizations without compromising on security or creating administrative overhead of managing multiple accounts for each user.
So this is the answer of Claude. What is an external Kerberos account? What is X.509 certificate? What is used for? What are the alternative security identity attribute? How it can be manipulated by an attacker? I need also, or I have asked Perplexity to provide me also with an explanation about what is external Kerberos account. Let me show you all here the explanation here. I'm asking it to explain what is X.509 certificate and external Kerberos accounts. Here also was the answer, and I asked it to give me an example on external Kerberos account. Let's first read the answer, okay, of Perplexity.
The Alt Security Identities attribute in Active Directory, AD, is like a special node attached to a user account that can hold multiple pieces of information. This node helps connect the user account to different types of security identities, such as X.509 certificates. Think of these as digital ID cards that prove someone's identity online, often used for secure communications. External Kerberos accounts. These are accounts from other systems that use a specific method for verifying identities, allowing users to access resources securely. In simpler terms, the Alt Security Identities attribute helps link a user to various forms of digital identification, making it easier for them to access different services while keeping their identity secure.
So here I'm asking it to explain what is external Kerberos account, give a real-world example, and let's see also the answer of Perplexity, which is also very, very good answer, very, very detailed.
Understanding external Kerberos accounts. An external Kerberos account refers to a user account that is authenticated using the Kerberos protocol but exists outside of the local environment or domain. This means that the account is not managed directly by the local Active Directory, AD, but can still be used to access resources within that environment, thanks to the Kerberos authentication system. What is Kerberos? Kerberos is a secure authentication protocol that uses tickets to allow users to prove their identity over a network. It ensures that both the user and the service they are trying to access verify each other's identities, which helps prevent unauthorized access. Example of external Kerberos account usage. Imagine a company named TechCorp that has its own Active Directory for managing user accounts. TechCorp also collaborates with a partner organization, Partnerinc, which has its own AD. Collaboration setup. TechCorp sets up a trust relationship with Partnerinc's AD. This allows users from Partnerinc to access certain resources within TechCorp without needing separate accounts. External Kerberos authentication. When a user from Partnerinc, say Jane.doe at partnerinc.com, wants to access a database hosted by TechCorp, she uses her existing credentials from Partnerinc. Authentication process. Jane logs into her own system, and her credentials are verified by Partnerinx AD. Partnerinx AD issues her a Kerberos ticket. When Jane tries to access TechCorp's database, her Kerberos ticket is presented. TechCorp system checks the ticket and verifies that Jane is authorized to access the database based on the trust relationship established earlier. Access granted. If everything checks out, Jane gains access without needing to create a new account at TechCorp. Benefits of using external Kerberos accounts. Seamless access. Users can access resources across different organizations without needing multiple accounts. Enhanced security. The use of Kerberos tickets reduces the risk of password theft since users don't need to share passwords between organizations. In summary, external Kerberos accounts facilitate secure and efficient collaboration between different organizations by allowing users to authenticate across trusted domains without creating additional accounts.
So here is the explanation. Now we can go further and see the next security indicator: computer or user accounts with service principal name that have unconstrained delegation. So we have talked about constrained, unconstrained, role-based constrained delegation. Here we can delegate to a computer or a service account, delegate to it to talk to the purpose. So for example, where I have said this example before, you have a web server. This web server is linked to a database which is in another domain. So you have a web server in a domain and it is linked to a database in another domain. When a user tries to authenticate to the web server, he needs to go to the Kerberos or a key distribution center to get a ticket grant ticket first to access the domain, and then service grant ticket to access the web server. And after that, if he needs to access the database attached to the web server, he needs to go to the KDC in the other domain to get a ticket grant ticket and then a service grant ticket to access the database server. If there is a trust, then I think he needs only to take a ticket grant ticket from his domain and the service grant ticket from his domain. I think this will be possible. This will be enough. And then he can access the database, okay? But this is a long way. What we can do, we can delegate or we can tell the web server to have unconstrained delegation. So he can ask the KDC to get a service grant ticket to access the database server in the other domain on behalf of the user. So the user does not need to have two or to get two service tickets, one for the web server, one for the database. Okay, he only needs a service ticket to access the web server, and then the web server will talk to the KDC to get a service ticket to access the database on behalf of the user. So this will make a seamless experience. We don't need to do something like that. But this is very, very dangerous. If you are configuring a computer account or a service account to have unconstrained delegation to talk to other services on other services or other servers, especially if it's talking to the Kerberos service on the domain controller, this is very, very critical. You should not make constrained or unconstrained delegation, because if, for example, I hacked the web server, I can use it to issue ticket grant tickets or to access other services on behalf of users. Okay, so here the web server is authorized to access other services on behalf of the user. So if I hack the web server, I can hack these services that the web server access them on behalf of the users. So this is very, very critical. We should make sure that we don't have any computer account or service accounts, okay, that have unconstrained delegation. Okay, well, I've talked about this unconstrained delegation, and we have some examples concerning this this example. If you, I think I can ask, or there is perplexity, I have already asked it before about something like that. If we go and go to the library, I have already some of these examples already there. Let's see. This is not the domain trust. We need to have, this is the Kerberos, but this is not what I am talking about. Let's see. This is not the case. We need to go again and can go to unconstrained delegation. Let's see this one. So we're asking it to explain this topic. Okay, we can see here, for example, here you can tell a computer, okay, to trust this computer for delegation to specific services only, use Kerberos only, so you can delegate it, or okay, you can tell the computer to talk or to take permission to access other services on other servers on behalf of the user. Trust this use and delegation specific services, use Kerberos and use the Kerberos protocol to talk to the talk to the KDC, I think, or talk to the or authenticate to the server or to the KDC or to the domain controller, I think. So here this is very, very critical. This is a computer account, and this also can be done for a user account. Okay, if we go there, we have a user, test user. This also is used for delegation. Okay, so you trust this user for delegation. Okay, and here use any authentication protocol services to which this account present delegated credentials, HTTP. I think he's delegating to a web server maybe. Anyway, so we can see a lot of things here. For example, this is a diagram, and actually this will be explained by Perplexity. If we go and tell him to explain, so this is how we can make delegation, okay? But here he's talking specifically about Kerberos delegation, okay, or unconstrained delegation for Kerberos. Okay, let's see here what is the situation. We need to explain it using a diagram or using a real-world example. Let's see that.
Understanding unconstrained Kerberos delegation in Active Directory. In the context of a domain named matrix.internal, let's explore the concept of unconstrained Kerberos delegation using a real-world example to illustrate its implications and risks. What is unconstrained delegation? Unconstrained delegation allows a computer or service account to impersonate any user in the domain without restrictions. This means that once a user authenticates to a service running on a machine configured for unconstrained delegation, that machine can use the user's credentials to access other services on behalf of that user. Real-world example, the Matrix internal domain. Imagine Matrix.internal is an organization with several services, including a web application hosted on a server named Web Server 01. This server is configured for unconstrained delegation to allow it to access a backend database on DB Server 01 to retrieve user data. User authentication. A user, Alice, logs into the web application hosted on Web Server 01. During this process, her Kerberos ticket granting ticket, TGT, is stored in memory on Web Server 01. Service access. When the web application needs to access the database on DB Server 01, it uses Alice's TGT to impersonate her and request access to the database, effectively acting on her behalf. Credential storage. Since Web Server 01 has unconstrained delegation enabled, it retains Alice's TGT in memory. This means any service running on this server can use her credentials to access resources across the network without further authentication. Likelihood of compromise. The risk arises when an attacker compromises Web Server 01. Here's how. Attack vector. If an attacker gains access to Web Server 01, they can dump the memory of the process handling Alice's session and extract her TGT. Credential theft. With Alice's TGT, the attacker can now impersonate her across the entire domain, accessing any resource that Alice has permissions for. This could include sensitive databases or administrative tools. Lateral movement. The attacker can leverage these credentials to move laterally within the network, potentially gaining access to higher privilege accounts or sensitive information. Mitigation strategies. To mitigate these risks associated with unconstrained delegation, implement constrained delegation. Instead of allowing unrestricted access, configure services with constrained delegation where specific services are listed for which delegation is permitted. This limits what an attacker can do if they compromise a service. Regular audits and monitoring. Conduct regular audits of accounts and services configured for delegation. Use tools like PowerShell cmdlets, e.g., Get a Decomputer, to identify which accounts have unconstrained delegation enabled. Restrict privileges. Limit which accounts can be configured for unconstrained delegation. Only trusted service accounts should have this capability, and elevated privileges should be tightly controlled. By understanding how unconstrained delegation works in Active Directory and its potential vulnerabilities, organizations like those operating under the domain matrix .internal can better secure their environments against Kerberos B.
So this is a very, very good example. And here, okay, this is why we need to focus on these accounts or computers. We have seen an example. If we go to Claude, okay, I need to get the explanation because I have already rest of Kerberos transition. No, this is securing delegation in Active Directory. I think this is it. So if you go further and see, no, I think this is not what I am talking about. If we go again and see all of unconstrained, let's see unconstrained delegation, risk of unconstrained Kerberos delegation, this is it. And if we go further and see here the example, so here I think, let me show you here also an example. Let's see the demo. Okay, but I will show you something better than that. If you go and get the Kerberos delegation, so this is not the case. I need to get, there is one good explanation here. Aggregation strategies delegation. Let's see this one. No, this is not the one. I think here I have, okay, I think here I have done this already. Vector demo. No, I think there is another one. Escalation demo. No, I have already made interactive demo. Okay, this is the one. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, let's read it loudly first and see the diagram. So here he gives us also an example of unconstrained Kerberos delegation. Let's read it loudly or read it from here.
Start new chat. Let's break this down using a real-world example in the context of Active Directory for a domain named matrix.internal. Imagine Matrix Corporation has an internal network with the domain matrix.internal. In this network, there's a file server called File, SRV01, that many employees use to access important documents. Unconstrained Kerberos delegation. The IT admin has configured File, SRV01 with unconstrained Kerberos delegation. This means File, SRV01 can impersonate users to access other resources on their behalf. Service principal name, SPN file. SRV01 has an SPN associated with it. Let's say CIFS/file, SRV01.matrix.internal. This SPN is what the indicator is looking for. How it works normally. When Alice from marketing logs into File, SRV01 to access a document, her Kerberos ticket granting ticket, TGT, is temporarily stored on File, SRV01. This allows File, SRV01 to access other resources as Alice if needed. The security risk. Bob, a malicious IT staff member, gains control of File, SRV01. Because of unconstrained delegation, Bob can A. Extract Alice's stored TGT from file SRV01's memory. B. Use Alice's TGT to impersonate her and access any resource she has permissions for, such as the HR database. Likelihood of compromise. If Bob knows that file SRV01 has unconstrained delegation, it becomes an attractive target. Many users, including executives and admins, likely access this file server regularly. By compromising file SRV01, Bob potentially gains access to a wide range of user credentials, some of which might be highly privileged. In the context of Matrix.internal, the security team at Matrix Corporation should run scans to identify any computer or user accounts, like file SRV01, that have SPNs and are trusted for unconstrained Kerberos delegation. They should then evaluate if this level of trust is necessary, and if not, reconfigure these accounts to use more restrictive delegation settings or no delegation at all. This example illustrates why unconstrained Kerberos delegation can be a significant security risk in an Active Directory environment like Matrix.internal, and why it's important to identify and properly manage accounts with this privilege.
So here let's see a couple of diagrams. Here Alice stores Alice here in the file server, and then Bob compromises file server, and then he can access the database. This is the last step. Bob has successfully impersonated Alice and now can access resources on her behalf. Okay, if we go to the other diagram, the same one, okay, and then we see the same diagram, but here we have a lot of diagrams. If we go there, the same diagram. Okay, let me get another diagram here. So here we can see also a lot of diagrams created by Claude. Here we see implement servers security, use constrained delegations of unconstrained, disable delegation when not necessary, implement monitoring for delegation abuse, apply principle of least. So this is a question how to meditate. We can choose all of them, which is 100%. As we can see here, there's a lot of interactive elements. If we go and see also other diagrams, so also this is a diagram. Alice authenticates to the domain controller, then access the file server, okay, and then file server impersonate Alice to access HR database, attacker compromise file server, and then steals the credentials of Alice on the file server, and then he can have access to all of the resources that Alice have permission to access. If we go and continue with the other diagrams, here you go. This is also another diagram. Alice requests access to file server. She needs a ticket grant ticket from the KDC. Then the ticket is granted. Then she can access the file server. Okay, and then she needs to have service grant ticket. Okay, to access the file server. She is granted access to the file server. And then the next step, first of all, you need to show the explanation here. We can see here that he gives us a scenario, shows the normal Kerberos authentication process in the Matrix internal domain. Alice requests access to file server, receives tickets from the KDC, then access the file server. Okay, okay, these are the steps. We have seen this before. Okay, this is the normal process. Unconstrained delegation, we will see the steps. Alice access file server after getting the ticket or the service grant ticket. Then the file server access access the HR database on behalf of Alice. This is here the situation. And then service ticket is granted, so the file server will get a service grant ticket to access the HR database on behalf of Alice. Okay, so this is it, and then we can go next step. Then access file server access HR on behalf of Alice, and then it is cached, the credentials are cached on the file server. Okay, so this is the step. If we go to the last one, attack scenario, now a hacker compromised the file server, gets the credentials of Alice from the ticket ground ticket, requests a service ticket to access the DB on behalf of Alice. So this is how the attack is done, and all of this is done by Claude. You just him to explain using interactive elements, interactive diagram. This will give you all of what I am showing you. Okay, Kerberos delegation. Okay, so this is the next security indicator. I think we will stop at this point. In the upcoming video, we will begin talking about account with constrained delegation configured to KRBTTG service account. We will stop at this point. It's a very, very critical security indicator. We will discuss it in the upcoming video. Hope this video informative to you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.